So intriguing team as far as young talent and what we're going to see from Anthony Richardson. So far in preseason, we've seen the really good, we've seen the inconsistency from Richardson. So what are you expecting this year for the Colts?
Inconsistency.
Perfect.
Yeah. Richardson is I think really interesting because he's the next quarterback after Trey Lance that when you start looking at the number of pass attempts that all these guys have had, Richardson is the only guy in the same ballpark as Trey Lance from the moment of their college recruiting to like now, right? I drew up a list of pass attempts for all these guys. There were a ton of guys in the same recruiting class. Obviously Richardson isn't, but all these, like Trevor Lawrence has 5 times the number of pass attempts as Trey Lance does from the moment they were recruited to now. They were in the same recruiting class. Justin Fields is like 3 times more for Trey Lance. Trey Lance is so far off the bottom of that list. Will Levis, interestingly, is the next guy on that list in terms of low end relative to Trey Lance. And yet Levis is almost twice what Trey Lance is. Richardson has less. Richardson has fewer pass attempts since he was recruited than Trey Lance does at this point in his career. And that list included, NFL preseason, NFL regular season, etc. The point being, Richardson is a wildly inexperienced quarterback, like historically inexperienced. And we've just seen one of those guys bomb hard in the NFL. But the narrative is kind of the same, which is incredible athlete. Now, Richardson's a better athlete than Trey Lance. Great arm, talented, and needs the reps, needs to play. And the Colts recognize this, which is why he's the starter. Like, they're not going into this saying, we're going to give him a year on the sideline, he's going to learn from the bench, blah, blah, blah. Like, they recognize he needs those reps. He needs pass attempts because he's going to need to read defenses. And one of his turnover-worthy plays in preseason against the Eagles, you can kind of see it in action. Like, it's an RPO, and he misreads it. And he realizes halfway through throwing that he's about to throw it to a linebacker and tries to pull it down and loses the handle, and it's a fumble, right? But the point being, you could sort of see in real time, this is him learning. Like, this is him reading something that he hasn't seen before, and it was about to result in an interception, and he tried to back out of it and didn't manage to get it done. But he needs a season of those, right? He needs an entire season of seeing NFL defenses, disguise coverages, all the things he hasn't seen yet, and just work through it. And the Colts, I think, in Shane Steichen, they've just done this with Jalen Hurts. Like, they understand what the game plan needs to look like. And also in preseason, like, we've seen a ton of why it can function, because there's been a lot of plays where Richardson has got out of trouble and done something with his legs and picked up a first down, or, picked up a first down, then had it negated with holding or whatever. But, like, there's a ton of plays where his athleticism is going to keep the drive alive for him to fight again and make another attempt at moving the chains with his arm. But that's what it is. It's going to be a season of learning for Richardson, which I think is probably going to have some highs. It's probably going to have some real lows to it as well.
I'm not ready for that.
No?
I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for the social media reaction to
every week.
Look, Anthony Richardson. This is the Anthony Richardson's not accurate. ... Watch this pass. Anthony Richardson can't play in the NFL. Watch this pass. There's going to be no in between. There's going to be no in between. I mean, his game against the Eagles, as you mentioned, that was the most extensive playing time that he had. Mm-hmm. We kind of saw all of that. We saw the dart. We saw this is the potential. We saw him completely misread a simple concept and throw it to a linebacker for a dropped interception. We saw the turnover-worthy play that you mentioned. We saw him do the quarterback things that we have lauded him for. We've said he'll stand in the pocket. He'll go through reads. We saw it in camp. We saw it at Florida. We saw it here in the preseason. Went through his reads and then airmailed the throw.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So, like, we're going to see the full gamut, right? The whole deal for Anthony Richardson in this year. All I ask, give me the solo shot. Give me the solo.
We don't do that in this show.
Give me the solo.
Don't give him a solo. Put a solo somewhere else.
There it is.
Focus on a spot in the wall.
PSA. Please do not overreact to every single Anthony Richardson play on social media. Now, I also can't promise that I'm not going to post some of the good ones because they could go viral or something. They could get you some clout. But do not overreact to Anthony Richardson this season because it's going to be a roller coaster ride. All right, carry on.
Yeah. The fact that what you can see from his tape on a weekly basis, though, is that he wants to be a quarterback. He's not, so he's inexperienced rather than raw. And the difference, I think, is raw quarterbacks don't read coverages. They don't work through progressions. They don't hang in the pocket. They don't want to be pocket passers, or at least they might want to be, but their instinct to run and just be an athlete overrides that almost all the time. Richardson doesn't do that. Like he plays the game a lot more like Lamar Jackson did, which was the narrative about him was always like, oh, he was never a scrambling quarterback. He was always a guy that you used as part of the designed run game. But Lamar Jackson sits in a pocket, works through progressions, and is a cerebral passing quarterback and always has been. Richardson is a lot more like that. He just doesn't have the playing time under his belt because he's barely played. He's got like 300 and something pass attempts. So you just need to get him out there. Now, the problem he has working against him is he does still seem inaccurate, and that's going to be an issue.
That was the one I wanted to mention too. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, just like, look, the wanting to be a quarterback thing is important, and the being able to sort of hang in a pocket and avoid sacks and work through a progression, all of that is really good and a really good starting point, but you undermine it a lot if you're going to have like a 50% strike rate just in terms of hitting a target.
All right, I don't have the exact stats in front of me. I have one stat, though, that you could bring with you to the Labor Day barbecue next week.
One stat.
So on the good side for Anthony Richardson, right? This is for every good thing. There's a bad thing in there too, right? So the good things, most yards per attempt when scrambling in college football since we started tracking this stuff in 2014, 12.8. So they'll use him in the design run game, and also when plays break down, he's a creator. So that's good. He's good at avoiding sacks.
Yes,
right? That's where something. Trey Lance never had that, right? So when you're comparing quarterbacks, the trait for just avoiding those kinds of negative plays, pretty good at, and that generally carries over. And those are the things that usually the best quarterbacks have.
Yeah,
elements
and this is like, it's going to be a balance, right? Because so let's say it's trying to figure out like where are these margins going to land in terms of averages, right? Because a quarterback is going to throw for 7.5 yards per pass attempt generally, right? But then they're also going to vary in percentage of how many times they get sacked. And when they get sacked, that's like a negative 7-yard play. But then you have a guy like Richardson who's going to take fewer of those, so fewer of those negative 7-yard plays. But he's also like 10 to 20% less accurate than these other guys. So he's leaving another bunch of 7.5-yard plays on the table by missing them, right? And it's really a case of just when you throw 600 pass attempts or when you drop back 600 times, where are those two things going to end up? Like, which is it, a net negative or a net positive relative to like the average quarterback?
All right, I found the stat that I wanted to. When we were doing the quarterback preview, I cherry picked just to paint a picture accuracy percentages in college, just because you want to see this group, right? This is the group that I picked. Justin Herbert was at 58%. Mitchell Trubisky was at 58%. This is actual ball location in college. Josh Allen was at 53%. Then Lamar Jackson at 52%. And then near the bottom of this list that I showed you here, Trey Lance, 47.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson, 46. And my concern with Trey Lance in that 2021 draft class, of that first round 5 quarterbacks, he was in a different world of inaccuracy plus the inexperience. Richardson right now is in a different world of ball location, accuracy, percentage. Now, I put Josh Allen and Lamar on this list to show they weren't great either, and they improved. Okay? So it's possible, at the same time, Trey Lance is in the news because he just got traded, and Richardson is right in that same ballpark as Trey Lance. I'll have the same take, though. Richardson, if you use his rushing ability, if you tap into that, it'll mitigate some of this. It'll create more open throws, create bigger windows, and you can mitigate some of the accuracy issues.
Yeah, it's absolutely the concerning thing if you're a Richardson fan is that when you look at, actual ball location type accuracy data, the only two people who were as bad as that were high draft picks are him and Trey Lance. And because we're literally 5 minutes away from Trey Lance bombing, that's not great in terms of the feels. But it's not, it is different. Like, remember, there was an adage for years, and we were part of it, that you can't fix inaccuracy. If you're inaccurate, no shot. You can't do it. It's not going to get better. It's one of those things you either have or you don't. And then Josh Allen comes along and goes from one of the least accurate quarterbacks in the NFL to one of the most accurate. Apparently, you can fix accuracy. Now, whether you can do that without, the circumstances that Josh Allen had or the individual coaches or whatever it is, that's a different question. But you can fix fundamental inaccuracy, which is what Anthony Richardson is dealing with at the moment. I also tend to assume that it's easier to do when you've only had 300 and something passes from your moment of recruiting to now than it is if you're like 2,000 pass attempts into this thing and you're, fairly locked into a mechanical process, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what he's battling against. Like, you're going to have this entire season where he just needs to get reps, and then you have to hope that he's not so inaccurate that it's not a fixable thing.